In moving resolutions, for example, you're allowed 3 minutes. You don't need to take 3 minutes. If you can do it in 1 minute, that's fine. We also have a system where resolutions should be formally seconded, but they can actually be formally seconded.
Party that we live in a new country, and that new country is called Scotland. Independence deferred. That's the name of this country today. And you know, I'm struck. This conference meets at a time, and there's a very strong parallel with that the referendum shares with this parliamentary by-election in Mid Lanarkshire in 1888. The result of that by-election is known throughout British political history as famous for the candidate who came fourth. Nobody remembers who won. They remember only the candidate who came fourth because his name was James Keir Hardie. And it was the very first election where working class people realised they needed to stand on their own, with a party of their own, and reject the Liberals. So it's one of those occasions where the most important thing about that referendum was what we did in the Yes campaign. And if you need evidence, in the month since that referendum, more than 60,000 of our fellow Scots men and women have joined the 3 independence parties. 60,000 people joining 3 political parties in the space of a month. So much for political parties being dead, eh? Nobody told the 60,000. And there's now talk, and we'll discuss it today in the resolutions, of an independence alliance, set of candidates fighting the 2015 general election to unseat dozens of Labour MPs in Yes marginal constituencies. And it's right that the Scottish Socialist Party looks at that, and we will do today. And the general election in May next year is going to be dominated, on the one hand, by the fall in living standards that's seen working class people see their income fall by £50 a week in real terms since 2008, on the one hand. And on the other hand, the politics of UKIP, who wish to scapegoat immigrants and claimants for a crisis caused by the bankers. And again, the Scottish Socialist Party has much to say in both these regards. But in my remarks to conference, I want to celebrate the achievements of the Scottish Socialist Party in the past year. Because as both my colleagues have said, we can record at this conference that the Scottish Socialist Party has made huge progress in raising the party's profile, huge progress in recovering our reputation amongst hundreds of thousands of Scots this past year, down to the work we did in the independence campaign and pursuing our cause for an independent socialist Scotland, a modern democratic republic. We've held dozens and dozens and dozens of public meetings from Aberdeen to Ayr and all points in between. We produced a submission to the Scottish Government's White Paper. We published 2 pamphlets, booklets, one on independence and one on the case for a republic. We hosted 2 Scottish Socialist Voice forums on the way forward for the independence movement in the course of the last year, and helped to remind the Scottish people why they need the Scottish Socialist Party so much. And as Bill mentioned, in a breathtaking, quite frankly, a breathtaking 4 days after September the 18th, we saw 2,500 people apply to join the party in recognition of those facts. And I have to say to you, I rather naively thought that after the 18th of September, we'd have the referendum, the vote would be declared, and we'd have a bit of a rest. Because we'd no money left, did we? We'd spent our money in the referendum campaign. And what happened? 2,500 people applied to join the party, and I had to put £2,700 in my credit card to pay for the stamps to send out their membership packs. And we were delighted to do so because we wanted to professionalise the service we provide to our customers, so to speak. If you want to join the Scottish Socialist Party, you're welcome. You get an immediate reply, and you're immediately brought into the battle to construct a socialist party, a mass socialist party in this country. We had a 3-fold increase in our membership in 96 hours. There's never been a socialist party in Britain and these Isles who've ever seen that kind of interest and that kind of membership rate of application. And the response, I believe, was a fitting testament to the party's growing reputation, and I'm delighted that so many of those people who applied in the last month have been able to join us today. This conference is a reflection of that, and I say to all the people both here and watching this live throughout the country, if you've joined the Scottish Socialist Party, then welcome. You've made the best and wisest decision of your entire life. And of course, I have to say, on the other hand, not everybody was impressed with the Scottish Socialist Party in the last year, were they? No, the Labour Party accused us of cozying up to the Nationalists. The BBC ignored us completely as part of their black propaganda. And the rich corporate elite in this country, who run the country, are of course terrified by the ideas and the growing influence of the Scottish Socialist Party. Which brings me to a certain noble lord, the noble Lord Smith of Kelvin, who decided to exclude the Scottish Socialist Party from his commission on what powers should be devolved to the Scottish Parliament. Despite the fact that the referendum was an exercise in the spirit of inclusion, with record registration, record levels of turnout, political engagement like we'd never seen before in every town and village in the country, despite the fact that the electoral registration had registered 6 parties who have to produce 6 sets of accounts and had to provide by 6 sets of rules, and despite the fact that David Cameron had explicitly laid down the instructions for that commission to be cross-party and fully inclusive. So I protested on behalf of the party to Lord Smith and pointed out that there were 6 parties in the referendum debate, 3 in the Better Together side and 3 in the Yes side, but only 5 were invited to join the commission. And he emailed back, the noble Lord, so he's one of my pen pals now, emailed back to say, yeah, but look, the Scottish Socialist Party currently doesn't have any MSPs at Holyrood. And I replied and said, the referendum wasn't a Holyrood debate. The referendum was a national plebiscite carried out in every town and village and city in this country, and the Scottish Socialist Party, wherever present, he might have paid better attention. I also pointed out that his case was further undermined when half the people who turned up to sit in the commission turned out not to be MSPs at all. We had a Baroness from the House of Lords, unelected, just like Lord Kelvin, with an Edinburgh City Councillor and 2 Labour MPs. So they're not represented at Holyrood either, are they? And the truth is, the Scottish political establishment sees, as I mentioned before, the Scottish Socialist Party as a threat to their rule. And quite frankly, they're right to, because we are a threat to their rule. And incidentally, you can read the Scottish Socialist Party's submission, as you well know, on the party's website, and every delegate here at the conference was provided with a copy to read in full today. Building Scotland's Socialist Party is extremely demanding. In conference, we've achieved what the last year as a result of hard work and graft by a dedicated, highly motivated, but a small band of people. And I want to acknowledge their contribution and their leadership of this party at national and local level the last year. They've led the party with distinction through the most important political campaign in our 16-year history, with determination and elan. And the Scottish Socialist Party ourselves have been transformed by that activity, with more branches, more numerous and stronger. Our reputations enhanced, our campaigning is more professional. And I congratulate all those members of the party who rolled up the sleeves of their new sweaters and got involved in the local yes groups and campaigns and presented the ideas of the party articulately, comradely, honestly, seeking to increase our influence. And not only did we prove those who suggested that supporting Scotland's democratic right to self-determination made you a nationalist, we also helped to build the biggest grassroots political campaign this country has ever seen, and we should be immensely proud of the role that we played in it. And not only did we make fools of those who predicted in 2012 that Scotland was entering a post-SSP political landscape, we reminded people in Scotland why the Scottish Socialist Party is so important to political life. And you know, the magnificent independence campaign reminded us why we need a mass socialist party. We were involved in mass work. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people at local and national level pulling together. And we need a mass party in Scotland to raise the political consciousness of working class people about their own identity as a class, the nature of the struggle for socialism, and the nature of the class struggle in Scotland today. And joining the Scottish Socialist Party is more demanding than joining any other party, because we intend to change the world. We ask far more of our members than any other party does. We insist that you attend your local branch meeting to learn what the party's all about, to articulate our demands, and why we conduct our business collectively as we do. We ask you to pay higher subs than any other party in the country. We ask you to spend more of your time on party work than they do. But that's because we promise far greater rewards as a result. We're a party that campaigns actively in town centres, workplaces, communities. We are not frightened to take our ideas into every working class community in the country and ask for their support every day. The SSP, the Scottish Socialist Party, is Scotland's socialist party. And my message to those who say they've joined other parties like the SNP, my clear and profound message is, if you're a socialist, you should join a socialist party. Don't build illusions in others. You're not furthering the socialist cause by building illusions in others. You're hindering it both in the short and long term. So, conference, the Scottish Socialist Party aims to transform Scotland. Be clear, we intend to transform Scotland from a capitalist country run by a wealthy corporate elite and their interests into a socialist nation run for the benefit of the working class majority. And we're serious. We're serious about transforming Scotland from a capitalist society based on exploitation and misery into an independent socialist republic where self-determination, empowerment, equality and democracy reign supreme, and we will. And we've taken to our last conference, and by deploying the energy and talent of an elan of yourselves and all the people who've joined the party in the past period, I'm confident we'll achieve even more in the years to come. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thanks, Colin. We're now going to move straight into the section on resolutions. The first resolution is from the Lothian branch. I think Colin's going to move that again.
Of the Executive Committee and Lothians who've put this together. Clearly Sandra and many other comrades have been absolutely phenomenal over the last year, working towards the Yes campaign, attending and working through many, many public meetings, appearing in the media and putting their shoulders to the wheel. And I just think we should recognise that we have two national co-spokespersons. I'm sure it's an oversight, and I would expect everybody to vote in favour of the amendment. Thank you.
Be seconded formally? Okay. We'll just move to a vote on that. Those, first of all, in favour of the amendment? That's overwhelmingly carried. And now those in favour of the Lothian motion? That's overwhelmingly carried. This is dead easy now, isn't it? Could we now move on to the motion from the Glasgow South branch, which... Right? Oh, sorry, I've got my papers mixed up. Ayrshire branch.
Colin Turbot, Ayrshire SSP, very proud to move this motion, and it's based on our experience. Back in 2005-2006, we were decimated in the Ayrshire area. The only MSP that went with Tommy Sheridan was based in our area and virtually declared it a no-go area for people that were loyal to the party. Now, there was only intermittent activity for a few years after that, and then in 2011, using the skills and energy of Richie Venton, a few of us got together and virtually starting from scratch, we've created a very, very healthy branch in Ayrshire based around the kind of activities that are mentioned in this motion. and laid out here. It's about systematic meetings, turning out on winter nights. In recent years, I can remember when there only seemed to be a very, very few of us, mostly very inexperienced comrades, new to the movement, not people like myself, steeped in this kind of activity going over many years, but people who were completely new to it and had to be won to the systematic activity that we needed. The street stalls, the going out leafleting, the public meetings, some of which were very small, but we built from that. And the first meeting we had after the referendum, you could see how that had paid off. We had 50 people packing a tiny room in the back of a pub. That was our first meeting after the referendum, and we've continued to build on that. With the meeting last Tuesday night, had 20 people at it, an extremely good discussion about nationalism and the differences between us and the SNP. I'm going to just focus for a second on the only bit in this which I think is contentious, which is about the creation of virtual branches. This, comrades, is simply not to lose the people who are joining the party, who might be based in distant areas, maybe up in the Highlands, the islands, wherever it happens to be, so that they're not forgotten about and there's some effort made to try and organise them. So I'd ask you to support this motion in its entirety and reject the amendment deleting the reference to the creation of virtual branches. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that? Can we move formally? Okay. There's an amendment, first of all, from the Lothian branch.
I'll move that. I'm not sure the comrade is here who... the essence of it is, I think, the question of virtual branches, I think, needs more attention. That's what the amendment is suggesting. We have, you surprise anybody when you get 3,500 people. We have people in the Western Isles, we have people in Dumfries and Galloway, we have police in parts of the country where we don't have branches anywhere near them, unfortunately, at this stage. And I think, my feeling is, I think the issue of virtual branches needs more attention, because we're not creating a virtual party, are we? We're talking about campaigning in real terms. I think the issue of communicating and organising the party is done as we do it on the basis of branch meetings, coming together, people where we can. And I think the way to reach those areas that are currently not, where we don't have branches, we need to put effort in it. We need to put human resources into it. We need to bring people together physically to try and establish branches again there that we had there in the past. So I think the essence of the amendment is asking for this to be reconsidered so that the detail of how we do get those people who are involved in the party in more remote areas, at least the way the party is currently organised, involved in the party, needs more attention. Okay.
We also have an amendment from the Renfrewshire branch, Jerry.
I'm John Miller from Renfrewshire branch. We really like the strategy for branch building. We only have a problem with item 4, and it's a very small problem. It may well be that a branch doesn't have a comrade who's both the time and the skills to take on the role of organising Facebook, Twitter, branch website, and monitoring all of the online forums, as the motion would recommend. So we prefer that branches would be able to allocate tasks to best suit their own circumstances, and we feel that sharing the responsibility for online activity would be more appropriate for our branch and possibly for many others. So with the permission of the Chair, I would move the amendment in the name of Renfrewshire branch. Thank you.
Okay, the first amendment which came from the Lothian branch, someone's going to speak against it. Jerry?
Jerry McCartney again. Apologies for being the only speaking multiple times here. Just very briefly want to speak against the amendment from Lothian branch, which basically eradicates the proposal to have virtual branches. Colin's right to say that we have a number of members now in the Western Isles. One of them is my friend and comrade Ian Hogg, who was an SSP councillor in Seed Hill and Paisley for many, many years. Ian has, for family reasons and work reasons, moved And although we have multiple members in the Western Isles, we only have one in Benbecula. And to get from Benbecula to Stornoway is a 2-ferry journey, and it takes about 4 hours. It's completely impractical to suggest that we can organise all branches on a geographical basis. I agree with the motion which says that should be our aim. We should aim to have a branch in Benbecula, but given the size of the population, we might be waiting a little bit longer for that to happen. So, given we have technology, given we can organise these things in a new modern way, and given that much of the political campaigning through the Yes campaign was done electronically, I would urge you all to reject the Lothian amendment and support the creation of virtual branches. Thank you.
Okay, Cacon Francis. Rio then, okay.
Neil Scott, Campsie branch. I'm speaking in favour of the motion to be left as it is because I think there's kind of a, when we talk about virtual branches and Twitter and Facebook and things like that, there's a bit of a reticence amongst some comrades to use those media. And it's, I think rather than saying, let's not do that, let's take that out, I think what we should do, we should leave all of those options open. I think the way that people organise, now I think actually our Twitter account and our Facebook account and all of our social media interactions over the past couple of years have been, well, personally speaking, brilliant. And actually, I think that lots of people who were maybe a couple of years a wee bit sceptical about how these things work and how they were going to how they were going to work in our political party. I think lots of people now have come over and seen actually how these things can work for us. And I would imagine, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I would imagine lots of people in this hall today, their first interaction over the past couple of years with the Scottish Socialist Party has been online. Regarding virtual branches, the word virtual always seems as if it's somewhere out in the ether. It isn't. It's something that people can actually meet nowadays face to face to have conversations. Now, I'm a teacher, and one of the ways that we are now getting together with classes in Malawi, in Holland, in France, and in other parts of the country is by sitting children in front of something like these and sharing our learning. And if we can do it in schools, we can certainly do it in a political party. I'm a member of the EIS. One of the things that I was on a meeting yesterday, and one of the things that we were discussing yesterday is how to under equality. One of the ways we were looking at bringing people to meetings that they can't access for whatever reason was through using this sort of equipment. So I don't think by taking this out, I think by taking this out, actually you're going to isolate some people. I know that we definitely have to meet physically with these people and they have to do activity physically. Absolutely, that's fantastic. But nowadays, some of the ways of doing that physical activity is online, and some of the ways of accessing meetings is through some of this very simple equipment. By the way, that's a mobile phone on that tripod, and it's now going live out to whoever wants to watch us. Anyway.
Okay, Francis.
Hello, it's Frances Curran. It's for Glasgow I'm for Glasgow Central Branch. I just wanted to say something. I wanted to say it in the last resolution, but I didn't realise we were going to the vote so quickly. But it's relevant to this as well. And it's about our activism. This is fantastic to see so many members here. And I think all of us have taken part in the mass social movement that we've created in the last 18 months, 2 years, has been some of the best activism of my entire politics. It's been fantastic. And I think we've learned a lot as well. And I think we need to learn as a party that there's lots of ways to do activism and to get your ideas out there and to recruit people. I don't know about you, but there's been flash dancing for the Yes campaign, so maybe we'll have to have synchronised dancing for socialism. We've had morning cafes, in the living room, glasses of wine to discuss really heavy ideas on women for independence. We've had knitting. Maybe we're not going to knit the next banner, although it wouldn't be as heavy as these ones to carry. But there's been so many people who've had so much to contribute. Street theatre, singing, Lady Alba. And I think that I'm a bit worried. I love canvassing and I like street campaigning. And I'm prepared to go out leafleting in all sorts of weathers, as I'm sure many in here are. But I think we have to respect everybody's activism and what they've got to offer us. If it means spending 2 hours putting emails in a computer, that takes me forever. My techie skills are no brilliant. If there's somebody else in the branch who can send out a mail through MailChimp to 300 people that night, then that's fantastic. Or who books the meeting room, or who organises the workshop. And particularly for women with kids about getting to meetings and street activities. Carolina, who moved the resolution about the Women's Network in our branch, isn't here today because she's got an autistic son and her childcare fell through. And I think that we have to welcome everybody in, encourage everybody's creativity to get these ideas out there through social media and everything else. There's also members who've got a disability. Not just ask them to do things, but ask people what contribution they think they can make to building the SSP, to being creative, to connecting, to getting those ideas out there. And I think if we use everybody's creativity and what they've got to offer and the time they've got to offer, even if it's just an hour or two a week, then that's the type of party that I want to be in. I've learned a lot in this last 2 years, and I think that we can really import them into the SSP. We've got the best ideas, and we can become the best creative campaigners. It should be fun. Socialism with fun campaigning, even if it's pouring with rain. That's the type of party I would like to see.
Sorry, comrades. I'm a bit slow today. Margaret Bean, Glasgow Central, speaking against the amendment. I think as a party we need to move forward, and being as a lot of, I'm sure a lot of the new joiners are the dinosaurs like myself that's been here for day one, they would welcome with great enthusiasm and open arms Twitter and Facebook, and you've only to go out in the streets of Glasgow to get bumped into umpteen times with folk heads doing on their mobile phones doing whatever they've got to do. I even seen somebody in a cycle, believe it or not, with one horn, going by Buchanan bus station texting, you know. So I think the motion should be left as is, especially the amendment about social media, because I think to be seen as a party moving forward with youngsters coming in, they can take the party forward through that. As Francis said, they can sit and in 5 minutes get to 300 people, which would take us a week in the pouring rain or the driving snow. So I hope you vote against the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go straight on to a vote on this one. Can I take the amendment from the Renfrewshire branch replacing the term activists with group? Those in favour of the amendment? Those against? That's overwhelmingly carried. Can I take the amendment from the Lothian branch? Those in favour? Those against? The amendment's overwhelmingly defeated. Can I then take now the original motion from the Ayrshire branch? Those in favour? Those against? That's overwhelmingly carried. Okay, this is proceeding quite well, actually. We now have another resolution from the Lothian branch.
Comrades.
Sorry, could you introduce yourself?
My name is Scott MacDonald. I'm in Lothian branch. Things have moved quickly since this was published. I understand that I've been nominated National Membership Secretary. The conference welcomes new comrades to the SSP. In order to organise and communicate effectively, I've started building a national membership database. It's currently ongoing. People have been helping me out with that regularly. But the main meat of the motion that I want to push is is canvassing and voter ID. There's a record 4.1 million voters in Scotland now, thanks to much of our efforts in Yes Scotland and the Radical Independence Campaign and the Scottish Socialist Party. Let's keep track of every interaction that we have with these voters. Let's every petition signature, every donation, every purchase from the shop, every piece of data that we can collect and basically find out where our support is. Lothian's motion is to professionalise campaigning organisations using regularly updated a digital copy of the electoral register and as a contact database. Many parties use this regularly. The Scottish National Party, everyone who was active in the Yes Scotland coalition could see just how much they rely on this kind of organisation. As in, many parties use this combining with door knocking with their active campaigning on the streets. As an example, a friend of mine, Alex Ingram, recorded cycle accidents using data from the police and organised a campaign locally to effectively argue with MPs and MPs, MSPs, and in their local area. We can combine, that data and publicly available data in various ways. For example, combining median daily temperature data with council tax bands would help us, effectively argue a campaign for district heating and free home installation. For example, that's an example. The idea that we can effectively professionalise ourselves by using data. Leaflet manifests, canvassing runs, local knowledge, and basically combining this effectively. And essentially, the motion that I'm arguing for is to investigate this possibility and to report to the executive committee on such things, on the feasibility, on the cost, on the availability and the implementation of such a system. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I want basically us to drive this forward because it's important, because the machine that we can, the party machine that we can make helps us to get elected, and without being elected, we're just a pressure group. Anyway, thank you, conference. Stop.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? I take it when people put their hands up, that's because they're just formally seconding it. Okay. I'll put that to the vote then. Those in favour? Those against? That's overwhelmingly carried. Okay. Next resolution is from Cumbernauld and Kilsyth.
Kevin McVeigh, Cumbernauld and Kilsyth branch. Page 6, this is on, the way the motions are, the way they've been printed. Jim McVicker and his enthusiasm to get things printed, I was actually going to try and do a wee alternative version that had numbers and all that, but quite rightly Jim wanted to get them printed as quickly as possible, and I thank him for that. But it's basically the motions are in order in the paper clips. Turn the page, we're now on to page 6, and it will give you an idea of what it is we're actually voting on. And I hope the chair doesn't take it off my time. I think everybody's commented on the significance of events over the last 2 years or so. It has transformed not only, I think, Scottish politics, but Scottish life. There's a book currently out now by a guy called R.F. Foster, which talks about the kind of generation that brought about independence in Ireland, and about the involvement of people who had never been involved in politics before, and how that changed Irish political, cultural life. And I think there's an argument that we're possibly entering into that period. Not that I'm suggesting we take over the post office in an armed insurrection, but you know what I'm saying. And I think that this resolution is basically saying, look, everything is now opened up for the party, everything is now on the table. The argument and the discussion is already taking place, has been raised about independent election candidates in 2015, and I think the party should be involved in that. I think there are issues about whether it ever happens, particularly in the back of the SNP with their new membership, and they might not be up for it, but I think we should be pushing that idea, because I think the idea of unity, the idea of that maintaining the momentum of the campaign is right there in people's psyche, and I think the party should be identified in pushing that idea forward, and we should be involved at national and local level in those discussions. We should also, I would suggest, in the meantime, internally be considering our strategy in terms of 2015 if it doesn't happen, but I think in terms of what we're about and the public profile of the party, we should be arguing the case for the independence candidate. Turning the Scottish parliamentary elections, making independence key to that. Yes, we accept the democratic result of the Scottish people in a referendum, but we want to keep the pressure because, as Colin says, it's independence deferred. We want to make that one of the central issues in the election. We want socialist representation in 2016. It's critical that we try and get socialists into the Scottish Parliament, and we should investigate all possibilities, including the SSP standing on its own, including some form of electoral alliance if needs be on a common kind of programme and on a common basis. But we need to try and ensure that socialist representatives in the Parliament in 2016, and we leave it open and we continue to discuss it. I think we should be having discussions about the independence movement. We were one of the instigators, for example, of the Scottish Constitutional Convention. And I'm not suggesting we repeat that again, but is there some scope for maintaining some kind of formal independence campaign to maintain the momentum, keep people together? Thousands of people have been gathering in George Square and elsewhere. We want to maintain that particular amendment. And also the idea of the other groups like RIC, Women for Independence, National Collective, the cultural group, making sure that we engage fully in their discussions and their debates, and we maintain our position has been right at the central of the campaign. Along that line, in spirit of openness, we're accepting the amendment from the Glasgow Central. Not saying that that's going to be the outcome, but at least we should be involved in the debates about the idea of necessary and electoral alliance. We've got I put a question mark over this question. I do all we can and help. We'd like some clarity about what the difference is, effectively. And we're arguing opposition to the seeking to ensure socialist representation in 2016, not because we're opposed to that idea, but because, as I already says, then we've got to be discussing in 2015 with other people about the possibility of independence candidates, and I think it's a bit vague in terms of what's happening in 2016 in that particular amendment, and I think we should be a bit sharper in saying that we want to be involved in the discussions about takes out the idea of independence being central to that particular campaign. We think that should remain, and we should be wide open in terms of discussing prospects for what happens in 2015 and 2016. I hope you support this motion, and I hope we can take that energy that's been brought into the party by the people that have joined, been brought into the party by the Yes campaign, and we can really push that forward, because I think it offers an unprecedented opportunity to transform Scottish society, and the SSP has got to be at the heart of ensuring that happens. Thanks very much.
Do we have a seconder for that? Okay, we've got straight on to the amendments. The amendment from Glasgow Central. That's been moved formally. Can we have an amendment from the Renfrewshire branch? Move formally. All right, okay, John.
Hi, John Miller again. You don't speak at conference for 10 years and then suddenly you can't get off the stage. But this isn't really an instructive motion, and it only asks us to engage in debates. So I'm not too worried, except that if it were to become policy, the phrase do all we can is sort of absolute. There are many things that we should be doing and many fights that we should be fighting: poverty, inequality, welfare cuts, austerity, living wage. And if we instruct all bodies of the party to focus our total resources and manpower on the single issue of independence, because that's what do all we can means, then everything else we do is going to get put onto a back burner. So that's not really acceptable. So with the permission of the Chair, again, I'd like to move the amendment in the name of the Renfrewshire branch to change do all we can simply to help. I think there is a difference, Kevin. Thanks very much.
Okay. I think I'll just move straight to the vote on this one. Okay. Okay, Richie.
It's a question how we proceed. I don't like procedural stuff. Richie Venton, West of Scotland organiser and National Trade Union organiser. All I was going to suggest is that on pages 6, 7, 8 and 9, there's motions on very much the related issues. I actually think it might be better for the point of view of the vote at the end of it for each motion if there was a kind of grouped discussion. Shoot me down if you disagree, but it's just that there's points in each of those motions that are on very similar issues. Otherwise we'll be voting on this motion and then going back to the same issue in a different way from a different angle in other ones. You know what I mean? There's things about yes candidates, 2015, 2016, and all in all of those different motions. I just think it'd be better if we grouped them together, got them moved, and then discussed it as a group motion, group debate. Thanks for the expression.
Okay, that's I think a reasonable suggestion. Have we got agreement on that? Can we show of hands for the way forward? Okay, that was agreed. Okay, we'll come back to the votes later. The next motion is from Glasgow South. Katie.
Hi Conference, I'm Katie Bonner from the South Branch in Glasgow. The motion is quite similar to some of the other ones that have been kind of said, as Richie said. First of all, I'd just like to congratulate everyone on all the work they did during the Yes campaign. Obviously we're all disappointed, but if you look at independence more as a process rather than just something to be achieved on 18th of September, we're doing really well. Obviously we increased the vote to 45%, so much kind of, and that was with all the kind of negative campaign from the other side. So I'll not speak too long on this because I know it's very similar to everything else. The motion simply says that at the same time we restate our aim to help achieve the widest unity of left and progressive forces, particularly those which emerged during the campaign. We believe there is no contradiction between these two positions. In fact, the best contribution we can make to building a strong united left in Scotland is in building the Scottish Socialist Party. So we asked the conference all our efforts now must be focused on taking opportunities and building the radical mass movement needed to transform our society, so working with other people as well. Okay.
Okay, do we have any seconders? Okay. John.
Thanks, Chair. John Davidson, Glasgow South Branch, to second the motion. And comrades, I have to start by saying that events and things since the referendum have been grim. I think that we've lost all credibility in the eyes of the public. Our lack of principles have been exposed by getting into bed with the Tories. We've seen our support in our heartlands and working class communities plummet. And at the same time, we've seen our political opponents experience exponential growth. And just yesterday, we saw our leader forced to publicly resign in the pages of the Daily Record. Oh, wait a minute, that wasn't us, that was the Labour Party. I think it's testimony to the role that both the Scottish Socialist Party and individual members of the party have played in the referendum that we've witnessed the most rapid expansion in socialist politics in Scotland. And it was absolutely no coincidence whatsoever, comrades, that the increase of support that we saw during the last few months of the campaign happened at the same time when the formerly quite corporatist Yes campaign adopted working class arguments and slogans such as End Tory Rule. The result of the referendum highlighted what we've always known, that independence is very much a class issue. The poorest areas of Scotland voted yes. North Lanarkshire, Western Bartonshire, Dundee, every one of the 8 constituencies in Glasgow. We need to harness the energy by building an independence coalition for 2015 that can challenge the last remnants of the Labour Party. And we should play a part in both building the Scottish Socialist Party and in new initiatives like the Scottish Left Project, just as we did with the Radical Independence Campaign and the Yes Movement. As we look towards 2016 and give the hundreds of thousands of working class voters a home and a viable mass socialist alternative to the discredited, humbled shambles that is the new Labour Party. We've proven in the last 2 years that we can build the party and play a leadership role in broad coalitions. We can and we must do the same again. I second.
Okay, thanks. Ken.
Comrades, Ken Ferguson, Mid and East Fife, Scottish Socialist Party. The resolution that we've tabled, the sentiments have already been well explored, I think, in some of the previous discussions, and the ideas on our motion, which encapsulated in the Cumbernauld motion. I think the critical factors are two. One, I think we have to support, if we can get it, yes candidates in the general election, because that is the bridging mechanism which will allow the yes voters who voted Labour previously, but voted yes in the referendum, to stay on the yes side and remove some of these treacherous Labour MPs who have visited this no vote on us. And I think that's a really important issue. And secondly, we are greatly in favour of maximum cooperation to get a socialist presence, an SSP presence, plus other socialists, or however way it's done, into that Parliament in 2016 as part of an independence election slate. So what we'd like to do, with the Council's permission, is to withdraw our resolution, because we think it's more adequately dealt with by some of the previous discussions we've had. So, Chair, if you could ask them, thanks.
Okay.
Acceptable.
Okay.
Okay.
That's acceptable. Campbell. Hello, I'm sorry, but if the resolution's been withdrawn, we can't really have amendments to it. I'm sorry, Campbell, I can't make out.
Come up to the mic, Campbell. It's not good enough. He's asking me.
My point of order is, in the normal of things, that might be a branch's prerogative to withdraw their motion. But in this case, this means that the conference does not have the ability to discuss the second Glasgow Central Amendment, which I think ought to have the right to do that.
I'm sorry, Campbell, but if the original resolution's been withdrawn, you can't even have an amendment to it, so I think we need to move on.
Yes, that is the point. Does it need the agreement of conference, or can the branch just do it on its own?
The motion has been moved, it's withdrawn, on the basis that it's covered by other resolutions. That's a decision for conference. If conference decides that it wants the motion to go forward, then clearly we can discuss the amendment. So maybe a quick show of hands on, are people happy enough that this is withdrawn, and one of the consequences being that the resolution... I mean, okay. My opinion is, Campbell, genuinely, I think some of the issues you've raised about the 2015 general election, I think we will be discussing as a party, because clearly, although we're going to push for the independence candidates, then we obviously want to make sure that we also discuss our strategy for 2015 as the SSP in the event of the alliance or independence candidates taking place.
Okay, Campbell, I'll do this. There's a proposal that we go ahead and debate the amendment, or also a proposal that the amendment falls because the resolution has been withdrawn. Give a vote to, well, the resolution has been withdrawn from the branch. Has that been agreed by the conference? Show of hands. Okay, the resolution from the branch has been withdrawn. Can we have that agreed that it should be withdrawn? Right. Those against? Right, that's overwhelmingly claimed. There's now a second proposal. There's now a second proposal that we still allow a debate on the amendments, which is constitutionally strange. Yeah, I think the conference is happy for it to be withdrawn. Sorry, several people are talking to me at once. We've just had a decision to withdraw the motion, but a proposal to withdraw the motion, which is accepted by the conference. Is there a second proposal to discuss some of the issues? Okay, there seems to be some clarity about what we've just voted on. So we'll go back over it again. There's a proposal to withdraw, by the branch to withdraw the motion. Is that accepted by conference? Yes. Okay. Right, I'm actually going to move on here. No, I'm not bringing anybody up to the platform to do this. I'm going to stick by the original decision, which is that if a motion is withdrawn, the amendments can't stand, and I think we need to move on. I think this is getting covered elsewhere in the debate. Okay. Sorry, we now move on to the motion from Dundee branch. It's just been moved formally. Good.
In terms of the resolution specifically in independence, the next resolution is moving on to discuss the Women's Network. So based on that, what we would be doing is moving on to a general debate on the various resolutions on the issue of post-independence. Is that people clear on that? So there's a resolution Cumbernauld, etc. You can discuss and raise some of it and debate some of those issues, okay? And it would be helpful if you're speaking to maybe what you think in terms of asking people what you're voting for and all that, based on, you know, their contribution. Is that fair enough?
Okay, is that agreed? Okay, we're now moving on to a general discussion. Anybody want to come up? Right, Richie. Could also people come down to the front to indicate?
Comrades, Richie Venton. I'm just going to make a couple of general points. I'm not going to go through every clause and sub-clause and amendment line in each motion, because frankly, I'm confused unless I've got it literally in front of me, complete with my glasses, that I'll admit to use of. But I think it's your decisions on which things you vote for and against are based on a couple of basic ideas, in my view. First of all, we've just lived through what was not a nationalist movement, but a pro-independence movement with radical demands for redistribution of wealth and power in society. We played a massive part in that and gave the socialist voice to the case for national self-determination for Scotland. And in doing that, we have to recognise that the SSP is not just a pro-independence party, but a party that at its heart is socialist, encapsulated in the slogan for an independent socialist Scotland, which we adopted 16 years ago in our founding meeting in Glasgow in September 1998. So it's not a new idea for our party. It's at the heart of what we represent. And I think is simultaneously pro-independence and socialist in the context of Scotland. That's your guiding principle, if you like, on what we should do here and now. Now, 2 days after the result, we had an executive. And at that meeting, I proposed two basic ideas. One is that we have to adjust to the fact we've just had a no vote. What do we therefore say about this commission in terms of powers for a devolved parliament? And I think in a nutshell, for brevity, we're trying to avoid the trap being set by Westminster and their institutions to have, on the one hand, cuts to money from Westminster, on the other hand, the ability to increase income tax on the working class and the lower middle class, to blame the Scottish Government for the cuts from Westminster. And the best way to do that is to argue for concrete proposals on the powers we demand, which is why in the Commission statement we demanded things like the power to introduce a £10 Scottish minimum wage, the powers to reverse the benefit and welfare cuts, the powers to tax the rich instead of putting the burden of taxation on working class people. That's it in a nutshell, and we need to persist with that message while that phase of the issue is still debated. The other thing I think we need to adjust to is that this pro-independence, radical left-wing movement that was not a nationalist movement as such in its main, is something we need to do what we can to help to sustain at localised level through formations, but also at a national level in terms of next year's elections. 2015 is the worst possible terrain in terms of elections, either for socialists or for a Scottish-only party. Nevertheless, my message to those tens of thousands who have rushed off to join the SNP in their hope that that's the route to independence is this. Despite the numbers in the SNP, you will not get a yes majority of candidates elected in Westminster if you try to do it alone. Because there's people in their hundreds of thousands who voted yes, despite the fact they're loyal to Labour, despite the fact they're disgusted by Labour. They still vote Labour in a kind of tribal loyalty amongst the working class between Labour and the SNP. And those yes-voting Labour supporters will not be convinced in the main, some will, but in the main, of voting for the SNP if that's the choice to have compared to Labour next year, which is why the other suggestion I raised was that we push hard for the idea of some kind of pro-independence alliance, yes alliance, not the best name actually, but a pro-independence alliance of candidates. Now, where do we fit into that? The devil's in the detail, which I don't have time to even comment on, but put it this way, it's not to suggest we bury our socialist voice or gag it in the course of being part of a broader pro-independence slate of candidates, one candidate per seat in next year's elections. On the contrary, it's to say we maximise our voice where, for example, if we get agreement by those other pro-independence parties that we'd have SSP candidates in some seats as part of a pro-independence alliance, that then we would be able, for instance, to say we're the pro-independence candidate, but we're also Scottish Socialist Party. And this is the kind of policies we advocate to win over Labour voters, actually, to that stance, rather than drive them into the clutches of their own worst enemy because they're against the SNP and the tribalism comes to bear. And lastly, the devil in the detail, of course, but in 2016 there's a different terrain again. There's a system of partial proportional representation for the Holyrood elections, which gives us a far better opportunity to have standalone Scottish Socialist Party candidates potentially, although I don't want to prescribe the detail before we discuss it and see what happens. But there's a far better chance of that. But even then, it makes sense if we can get any kind of agreements between other forces on the left, other forces on the pro-independence camp, to say we're not going to cut each other's throats in individual seats or lists. That's, I think, the spirit of what we need to do. The detail of it is more difficult to define in motions and amendments, but that's my position on the thing, that we are the party that favours an electoral alliance for 2015 that stands for independence and tries to sustain that progressive pro-independence movement, but keeps a loud socialist voice as part of that as well. That's what we should do, and if the SNP reject that, or the Greens reject that, they are doing a disservice to those who voted pro-independence on a progressive level. Thanks.
Okay, who wants to come in now?
Willie Telfer Camtree branch, there's nothing worse than following Richie. Might be older, maybe it's a wee bit quicker to get to the microphone. Discussions about the Yes Alliance, talking about the 2015 elections here in the Cumbernauld motion. What it definitely is a knee-jerk. What it definitely isn't is a knee-jerk statement to say we should all fall behind the SNP. Now, we've already opened up discussions in our area through a radical independence Yes Alliance, or whatever we're going to call our grouping. And it seems to me within the SNP, then the layer of activists that were at chapping doors and canvassing are up for it. We also had Greens in that Yes Alliance up in Eastern Bartonshire as well. They seem to be less in favour of it and started arguing about, well, the SNP are going on about Scotland's oil. We don't want the oil lifted. There's significant differences there between. It seems that the activists in the SNP would welcome it if you look at the Facebook contributions, if you look at what they're actually saying when they're still operating as Yes Alliances locally. But the leadership of the SNP aren't going to wear it. But in terms of the motion that was put forward, we should be advocating it, because I believe the vast majority of the people that were involved in the Yes movement, not just in the SSP, SNP, RIC or whatever. And you can imagine it if politics were simple. You can imagine putting before the electorate in 2015, a majority of SNP candidates, the likes of Colin, and I still believe in 50-50, so the likes of Sandra, then bringing in people like Jonathan Shaffey, Carlin Leckie, Robin McAlpine and whatever, Canavan, Sillars, there's a name missing there, but I'm not going to mention it. We could stay united. Already there's talk for the activists on the other side saying that they're going to indulge in heavy tactical voting on the other side. So if we push for the alliance, it has to be there. We have to be seeing the party to do it. The SNP will know where it. The Greens will fall off that kind of bandwagon pretty quickly. But it's going to be left to the individuals if an alliance doesn't appear to tactically vote on the yes side. So support Cumbernault's motion for 2015.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, comrades. I'm Andrew Gray from Glasgow Central Branch. I mean, I think it's really positive that we're looking forward to the kind of next set of elections, but I think also we have to take a minute and look kind of back at the election. It just happened just last month, which we did lose. And I think what's interesting about it is that we lost for exactly the reason that we predicted we were going to lose. Because remember, like at this conference a couple of years ago and last year, and at the RIC conference, the point was made again and again that if the political leadership of the campaign was left with the SNP and their kind of brand of, you know, petty bourgeois nationalism, for want of a better term, then that was not going to be sufficient to win over the sufficient section of the working class that would take the vote over the line. And that was the whole raison d'etre of setting up the RIC. And you know, if you look at it, that's exactly how it played out. We did make a good bit of progress, and especially in areas where the RIC were more active, like Glasgow, you know, we managed that. We managed to get a majority, but in areas where the political leadership of the campaign was more left with the SNP, then we didn't get it. Because I think we have to be kind of a bit more nuanced in our understanding of the no vote and why people voted no. And I think there's a big section of no voters. I mean, I know quite a lot of no voters. Most of the people in my family voted no. I know a lot of people at work that voted no. I know, you know, people through the union that voted no. And by and large, I mean, these people were not voting because they don't believe in social democracy or because they want more austerity. What they were voting for, I mean, they were making a choice between two different pathways towards social democratic outcomes. One of them was independence and the other was electing Labour at Westminster. And obviously we have our own ideas about that latter, and for years we've been against that. But at the end of the day, when it came to the vote, a majority of that section decided to stick with what they know and stick with the Labour. And I don't think they're going to be one away from that, because I'm not convinced about this whole Labour Party disintegrating in 2015 story, because I think all these people having voted no and having effectively bet the farm on there being a Labour government next time, you know, it's going to be I don't know what the polls say at the moment, but come 2015, you know, when you're looking at Labour governments, continuation of the Tory government, you know, I'm not so sure that the Labour vote is going to collapse and everybody's going to vote SNP. So, I mean, the kind of point I'm meandering towards here is that, you know, electoral, it's just, I want to sound a note of caution about the idea of electoral alliances, because actually, if we look at the actual situation in the country at the moment, what that is going to mean is that we, you know, any electoral alliance is going to be dominated by the SNP. And I can't see them agreeing to stand down in any seats, because they're a national party and they've got pretensions to represent the nation. So they're going to want to stand candidates in every seat. And unless there's some seat that I've overlooked at the SSP were the closest challengers to Labour last time, you know, there's just no way they're going to compromise in it. So what any electoral alliance is going to basically turn out as a rerun of what the independence campaign was, which was us in, you know, whether it's a popular front or a united front or however you want to characterise it, with the SNP. And that's, you know, we just had a big election last month where that didn't work out. So I suppose what I'm arguing for is that, or the point I'm making, is that I broadly agree with the idea that of broader left parties and that's thinking about alliances and not being stuck in sectarian viewpoints. But I think at the same time it's vitally important that we maintain our political independence and our organisational independence. And I think we have to be wary of any talk of alliances or electoral pacts or whatever.
I could also say, I don't have one of these button things that press red lights, so we could maybe make it speed it up a little.
Hi guys, I'm Mark, I'm from the Stirling branch. I'm going to speak against the motion for a Yes Alliance. I believe that, as the previous speaker just said, the SNP aren't going to stand down in any seats, they're not going to give us an easy time, and the media isn't going to promote us in any sort of positive way. I mean, the attention that we got from the BBC during the referendum campaign, non-existent basically. So the only thing that I think is going to come out of standing in 2015 is losing our deposits. And I think we could save that money and better use it during the 2016 Holyrood elections. So that's my position.
Thanks very much to the Chair for allowing me to speak. I'm Liam McLaughlin from the Glasgow East branch. It was just kind of two really kind of quick points about the discussion about a Yes Alliance. I think it's just want to start by saying that I think it's great that we as a party are taking this on and debating it and are leading the way on it, and the way that the party does, and trying to bring people together to work under a common banner and a common name. I think we need to be very careful though in pushing it as an independence alliance. I think the referendum, the appetite was there for the referendum, and yes, we had these large levels of engagement, but the result was a no vote. I think we need to be pushing as an alliance to hold the no campaign parties to account on the vow that was made on Devo Max, and to ensure that we take us on that next step on the Home Rule journey. As Colin said, it's independence deferred. Let's no jump in and kill the issue of independence altogether by jumping in too early. And another quick point as well, just on the kind of issues and the effect that we could have. Richie touched on quite a lot there, that you've got Labour voters who vote Labour on kind of loyalty to the Labour Party. We might not win all of them over on the initial idea of alliance candidates in 2015, but what we can do if we get representation within Westminster is that we can table motions on things like renationalisation of the railways. We can table motions on scrapping or the Trident renewal that have got planned, and we can outflank Labour and show them up for the right-wing party that they are for within Westminster, and then take it for there in the future, and people will look at Labour's record and voting on the issues that the Yes or Devo Max Alliance, whatever it's called, is tabling, and the issues that we're bringing forward, and Labour's position on that, and I think that will benefit largely the independence coalition as a whole, but specifically the left or centre parties and ourselves more, as well as we're focusing on issues like the welfare cap, Trident renewal. So I think we've got a really good opportunity here to work with our partners in Yes Scotland, but we need to make sure that that distinct socialist voice, as Richie was saying, is still there in the motions and the bills and stuff like that we will be tabling as an independence alliance, and be very wary when we're entering into this coalition that those principles that we fought so hard to keep at the forefront of the independence movement remain at the forefront of any independence alliance movement. So thanks very much.
Hello, comrades. I'm Lewis Akers from the West Fife branch, and I'm completely in support of the motion. But I think if the SNP disagree on the alliance, then we should push for maybe a Green-Red alliance with the Green Party. And I don't think we should be standing in a Yes alliance in the 2016 Scottish Parliament elections. So.
Campbell McGregor, Glasgow Central. I'm not too bothered about how conference discusses this procedurally, but I think the Renfrewshire amendment is making some of the same points as is in the Glasgow Central line, which has fallen. As the co-chair said at the start, we have a distinctive socialist voice. Bill said at the start, we have a distinctive voice within the Yes campaign. If I may quote, as the Ayrshire Comrade branch correctly points out in their motion, the SNP, despite their massive recruitment, may encounter difficulties as their Scottish Government and local councils are forced by Westminster to implement cuts and redundancies. This vacuum creates an almost unprecedented opportunity for the SSP. The SNP is a pro-capitalist party. In Dundee, the SNP council is implementing cuts. The SNP has their main policies which we would disagree with are NATO and the monarchy. They lost significant numbers of people, of their own people, including three MSPs, over the NATO issue. It's backed by people like Brian Souter. Salmond is widely praised having fumbled the currency question during the election campaign. As Jonathan Shafi points out in his article in the Scottish Socialist Voice, the SNP are effective managers of the economy for Middle Scotland, likely to implement Westminster cuts. I suggest that while this does not preclude us from cooperating with the SSP over a lot of practical issues, including independence, we do not, in fact, have sufficient electoral agreement with the SNP to form a fully fledged electoral alliance with them. But there's also the sheer practical point that I just don't see this happening. At least I'll be surprised if it happens. From the SNP's point of view, this doesn't make sense. The best result at the last Westminster election for any of the other pro-independence parties was 5% for the Greens in Edinburgh East. I don't think it makes sense for them to stand down for the Greens for the SNP in winnable seats at the next Westminster election. So where do we go from there? I think at the very least we need a default position. If this, I think as Willie Telford from Cumbernauld recognising that this probably isn't going to happen in spite of a certain amount, even though there may be a certain amount of groundswell of opinion within the rank and file of the SNP, the likes of Salmond and Sturgeon. I'd be surprised if they agree to it. We ought to be having discussions with people like the Scottish Left Project. I'm not sure where they're at, where they're going, but it is a significant initiative. We do need a serious debate with them, which is why I'm in favour of standing socialist candidates in a limited number of targeted seats at the next UK general election. I support the Renfrewshire amendment, but I think at the very least, given that this election is now fairly close, it's only about 6 months away, I think we need to just sort out in practice what we're doing in relation to this election.
Thanks very much, Bill. I'm Colin Fox for the Lothians branch. I think this is a really, really important discussion. I know it's taking place in the branches, it's taking place across the whole party, and I think it's worthwhile reflecting on that we've got tactical and political decisions to take here about the 2015 elections and the 2016 elections. And I think my sense is that I want to rise in support of the Cumbernauld motion and ask that the Glasgow Central amendment be remitted, and for these reasons. First of all, the 2015 general elections, I think, I forget who said in the debate, these are really difficult elections. If you consider what we're looking at, you know, there's an article on the front page of the Daily Telegraph today where Blair is effectively saying Labour hasn't got a prayer, Ed Miliband's not going to win the election, etc. All the polls are saying it's on a knife edge, it's a dead heat, and that's the best Labour can probably look at. And I think we've got to look at the context of these elections, what we know from having fought them before, and what's the best way to advance the SSP's interest and the interests of the working class. So the 2015 general elections are a dogfight between the Tories and Labour. And what has happened traditionally in the past is everybody else gets squeezed in the middle. It's like to quote Joanne Lamont, two dinosaurs, two Titanosaurus Rex, and they crush everything in the middle. I remember this vividly because in 2010, when the party had this discussion last, I stood in this constituency against Alistair Darling, Edinburgh South West, on behalf of the SSP. This was Alistair Darling, who'd presided over the worst recession in 80 years, who drove the financial ship into the rocks as the Chancellor Exchequer in 2008. And what happened? Not because of me, I can't take all the blame, but his majority went up. His majority went up because people in Stenhouse, Gorgie, Wester Hales, the big schemes went in, held their nose and voted Labour, because Labour's basic message was, you got to vote Labour to keep the Tories out. And it's an absolute certainty that'll be their message again. And therefore, I think what we have argued for publicly, and I think the conference should reflect on, is we've approached and lobbied the SNP and the Greens to suggest that we put forward Independence Alliance candidates in 2015, so that there isn't a tribal contest between Labour and the SNP, Labour and the Greens, Labour and the SSP, etc. There's in effect an opportunity to capitalise on the fact, as Liam mentioned, so many Labour MPs across Scotland are sitting in yes marginal constituencies. In other words, these are Labour majorities, like Frankie Roy in Motherwell, where I come from. 20,000 Labour majority, but a majority of people voted yes a month ago in the independence elections. In my view, MPs like Frankie Roy, Davy Hamilton and Midlothian, etc., are sitting ducks, provided there's one Independence Alliance candidate put up against them. There's a chance to get rid of these people. And I think that's what we've argued for. And by the way, I notice in the SNP deputy leadership contest that people are following this. Two of the candidates have argued that as the basis of their platform, that the SNP shouldn't stand in every seat across the country. There should be an Independence Alliance candidate. And I think that's important. I think the SSP should continue to put pressure on. That should be our primary objective. Because the fact of the matter is, they're very difficult elections for us. They're very expensive. They're very much dominated by the London media circle and the London media debates. And it's almost as if Scotland doesn't exist, far less the SSP or our political agenda. That's the first thing. On 2016, Bill, to address the issue for Glasgow Central in particular, I think we don't have to rush into that consideration about whether or not we initiate discussions about electoral lines for 2016. Let's wait and see, because Liam touches on something I think really important. See, a year from now, next October, you could well have another Tory government. You could well have a UKIP referendum, in Europe, and you could well have none of those powers and those vows came to pass. And in my view, that's three qualitatively different factors and features in the independence debate that allows us to say, right, 2016, if you vote for the SSP, you vote for the Greens and you vote for the SNP, and if those three parties emerge with an overall majority, that's it. We have a mandate for independence, because the debate is entirely different. And I think democratically you can say that, because you've respected the outcome of the referendum, but you've also highlighted there are factors that now no longer apply and other factors that do. So my view is that I don't think we should initiate discussions about an electoral alliance with progressive organisations, because I don't know what they are. Are we talking about the SNP? Are we talking about the Greens? They're not going to enter an alliance with us in 2016. Not least of all because the DeHont system of PR, actually that rare occasion, helps three parties standing against each other to both win. So for that view, I would urge Cordon to support the Cumbernauld and Forsyth motion and remit the Glasgow Central Amendment. Thank you.
Okay, Comrade, you've agreed not to... Okay. I think we just have to go straight to the vote on this. Now, this is always complicated when you have a number of resolutions which are very similar. Sorry? Hello? Okay, what I was saying is we'll now move on to the vote. It's obviously quite complicated when you have a number of resolutions which are very similar and a number of amendments also which overlap, but we still have to go through it. So what I'm going to propose, given we grouped these together, was that we go through the amendments one by one and vote on them, and then go back to the motions and vote on them. Oh no, sorry, that's what I meant. Back to front. Okay. Now, Amendment 1 from Glasgow Central, there's been a proposal that that should be remitted back to the EC. So I'm going to put that to the vote. NC. Okay. Okay, can we have agreement whether that should be remitted? Show of hands. Those against? That's been agreed to be remitted. Okay. Amendment 2 from the Renfrewshire branch replaced to do all we can to remain the momentum, at least over the last 2 years, with help. Those in favour? Those against? Those in favour of, well, let's do this again. Those in favour of the Renfrewshire amendment? Those against? I don't think that was confusing at all. Amendment 3, it made perfect sense to me. Amendment 3. Right. Yeah. Amendment 3, I'm not going to read it out. Those in favour? I will read it out then, because people are searching through papers. Amendment 3, seeking to ensure socialist representation in 2015 and 2016. Okay. So those in favour of the amendment? Those against? That's really tight. I think we need a vote on that.
Oh, excellent.
You'll be asked to vote again. When you put your hand up this time, it'll be counted.
Applause for Andy and Louise.
Put your hand up when it's been counted.
This is Andy.
Where's Louise?
Louise, come up here so we can see how trustworthy you are.
Okay. Those in favour of the amendment?
This is in favour of the amendment. Sorry, very quickly. Can I ask that with conference agreement, Colin Rutherford, because he's standing up, acts as a teller up the stairs, all right? And then everybody can, tellers can meet at the back, vote, count the vote, we'll carry on and we'll announce the vote once it's all been counted. Is that agreed? So keep your hand up. That's my school teacher voice.
Is that count finished? Okay, those against? Has that count been completed? Right, you can go and confer. Okay, you can put your hands down now, I think. Right, while that count's taking place, we'll actually go. We'll come back to that motion, and we'll go on to the next motion, which is the motion from Glasgow South. Those in favour? Glasgow South.
Page 7, Glasgow South. We've debated it already. It was moved. That was the one that was moved by Katie and seconded by Joan. That resolution.
Those in favour? Those against? That's carried overwhelmingly. Sorry, somebody shouted my name. Okay.
Right, we had a general debate, okay, where we debated 3 resolutions. Cumbernauld, which we have to vote on again once we know what the result of the amendment is, because you're either going to vote on a motion that's amended or the motion as it stands alone, okay? We've just voted in the Glasgow South branch motion, okay? Okay, so the next, yeah, okay, no problem, sorry about that. It'll be page 9 for the Dundee branch resolution. The Mid-Fife one in page 8 has been taken away, has gone. And we now move on to page 9, the Dundee branch motion, which was formally moved, okay?
Okay, everybody saw the Dundee motion. Page 9. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Okay, now the amendment, just to go back to it. Right, go back to page 6. Right, it's the amendment at the bottom of the page, seeking to ensure socialist representation in 2015, 2016. Is this microphone not loud enough? It might be my voice then, there you go. The amendment, it says on the bottom of page 6, those in favour was 22, those against 71, so that's defeated. Right, we can now vote. Right, we're now voting the motion. Got that? No, listen to just to move on from that. The vote. The vote. It was overwhelmingly defeated. Possibly we have a better view up here. We can now move on the motion itself from Cumbernauld and Kilsyth. Those in favour? Those against? That's overwhelmingly carried. Okay. Okay, we'll now move on to the motion on the Women's Network from, is it Glasgow Central? Page 10.
Sorry. Francis Curran, Glasgow Central branch. I didn't expect to be moving this, as I said earlier, because Carolina moved it at the branch, but it was passed uncontroversially. Let me put my specs on, bifocals. I'm hoping it's going to be uncontroversial, given the very good record of the SSP on understanding women's discrimination and the fact that we're the only party that's got 50-50 representation, not just in our parliamentary candidates, but in the structures of the party. But I just want to make a couple of points. The Fawcett Society estimate that a child born today, 2014, will be drawing her pension before she'll see equal representation in Westminster at the current rate. On the other hand, Women for Independence meeting last month in Perth is the biggest political meeting of women since the suffragettes. Now that's got to say something about the independence campaign. And I think one of the most striking points, and for me it's been one of the most inspirational points, is the millions or the hundreds of thousands of women who have entered into political activity. Because how are we going to change the Fawcett Society's point if we can, as a society, encourage women to take part in politics and the decisions that are taken that affect women's lives? We need a say in that, and we need an equal say in the political parties and in the parliaments. The SSP has played a really important role. I can just say we've got something to be proud of. In 2003, we had 67% of our parliamentary group were women at that point in time. And hopefully will be in the future. Never mind this 50-50. No, I'm joking. But I think we've got a long way to go still, and we need to make a commitment to it. Those women have come into activity, and I don't want to in any way present women as the one bunch. We're different. We've got different interests, we've got different ideas. Young women face maybe different issues at that point in their life from older women or from women with children, women who play the role as carers. But one thing's for sure, this austerity and this economic recession is battering women disproportionately. I've lost hundreds of pounds in work and tax credit. I'm a lone parent. There are millions of women like me, but they're hidden. We're hidden behind the scenes because it's hard to show how my actual monthly income has been cut. And so what we need to do, or how I see it, is we have got a huge opportunity to have a dialogue with the women who've come into political activity and to convince them about why socialism and feminism, and we have to use the F word, I'm afraid, are actually the ideas that we should organise through or around. And that the SSP has to become very attractive. There's going to be a meeting of 400 women, 500 women. The 1,000 women was a sellout, by the way. You couldn't get a ticket for it. I've never seen anything like it in 30 years of campaigning. And so there's big opportunities here. But I think we need a women's network to allow us to come together to discuss about how women experience society differently from men. And we have to get that. And we need a chance to come together to discuss the different issues, the varied issues that affect women's lives in the here and now. What the answers to that are, why we're so low represented in politics, 27% as councillors who take massive decisions about my life in Glasgow, and what we can do about it, what the analysis is, and then what campaigns we can take part in. And also for all those new, I think 700 of the 2,000, over 2,000 have joined, new members are women, then we need to, not all women will want to take part, but we need to offer a space. Should those women want to take part in that discussion to come up with those ideas? Because I'm not prepared to wait until any daughter born today has to draw their pension. I want change, and you know what? I want equality, and I want it in my lifetime. And I think the SSP has got a big role to play in that on our very, very good 50-50, the only ones at the moment, and we can trailblaze on this, particularly if we set up a women's network.
Could you have a seconder for that?
Sandra Webster from Renfrewshire branch. I totally support the motion from Glasgow Central. I know I've been speaking to lots of women over the last couple of years, and like a lot of you, I found my voice as well, and our voice is not going to be silenced anymore. And I really feel there's going to be a need for women to get together and organise. The benefit cuts, as Francis says, are going to affect us most disproportionately. Carers are going to suffer in Glasgow Central, so I'd ask you to support the motion that we set up a women's network again. Thank you.
I'm actually going to move. Anybody oppose that? No. I'm going to move straight to the voting now. Those in favour? Those against? That's overwhelmingly carried. Okay, Now, I'm going to bring this section to a close in terms of resolutions. We have a catch-up session at the very end of the conference to take some more of the resolutions, the ones that we can do, in terms of keeping to the timetable of the conference. Again, I thank everybody for their patience during that time. These things are quite complicated when you have different amendments coming in that quite often cut across each other, but we actually got through it, which is quite good. We next have a number of guest speakers, the first of which is Alan Grogan. Sorry, just to introduce Alan. If anybody doesn't know, Alan was the Secretary for Labour for Independence and has just recently joined the SSP.
Thanks very much, Connie. The last party conference I was at, I didn't get the same kind of reception, so I very much appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation to come and speak today to conference. I spent the last 2.5 years as the co-convener of Labour for Independence. It's been wonderful to campaign with everyone in the Yes movement. I think together we radically altered the political landscape of this country. We brought political debate back into our society. We've made politics engaging and exciting again. And let that be the legacy of September 18th. I'm sure as many of you felt on September 19th, the same grief and hopelessness and despair as I did. All the rallies, all the debates, all the public speaking, the many miles and miles of travel I think we all took part in, all to come so close and yet so far. If you were like me, you were probably in a pretty dark place. My youngest son is 6 months old, and we read him the same story every night when he goes to bed. It's about this tiger who's afraid of the dark. And there's a line in it I always thought about after September 19th. It's always stuck with me. And it's about not fearing darkness. And it says, darkness is just the other side of light. It's what comes before our dreams. Well, comrades, the darkness we feel right now is already being lifted as we speak by the spirit and passion of those out there who continue to fight, and our dream of an independent socialist republic will soon be realised. The battle continues for all of us, not only with independence, but our fight for fairness, equality and social justice throughout this land, and our solidarity to those further afield. In the last 2 years, I've often been asked why I stayed a member of the Labour Party. The Labour for Independence was founded on the belief that not only would independence bring an opportunity for Scotland to rid itself of inequality, poverty and deprivation, but it was also an opportunity to see a restoration of a real Labour Party. I know, what were we thinking, eh? I didn't know Joanne would miss me so much, the fact that she's left. But we thought we could get the Labour Party back to being a real Labour Party, one that stuck to its roots to protect the rights of the workers, to take care of the sick, the old and the poor. But throughout the campaign, I came to realise that the yes vote was really the last chance to save the soul of the Labour Party. After the referendum result and after seeing so many so-called comrades, and I'm sure people like Jim Murphy will be horrified that I used that term in describing them, but to see these people high-fiving and hugging Tories, it was very clear that it was no longer possible to save the soul of the Labour Party. The great history and names within the party will live on, but they'll live on with those who hold true their ideals and their beliefs, not by having a red Labour membership card in your wallet. I've been steeped in Labour since a very early age. I grew up hearing stories from my granny about how the Attlee government changed her life and those around her for the better. I think the term inside toilet was probably mentioned about 15 times every time she told me. But the reality is that I joined the party based on the ideals of its past rather than the evidence of the current. Something Jean Freeman said during one of the Yes meetings that really struck a chord with me. She said that we don't owe political parties anything. What we have to do is to be able to look ourselves in the mirror and say, I live by the beliefs and values that I hold.
It was this statement more than any other which was in my thinking in the aftermath of the referendum and was a major reason why I resigned and tore up my card for the British Labour Party. Most of my adult life within the party, I regarded myself as something I'm not. You see, in the new Labour Party, the word socialism is either used very incorrectly to try and save your skin, or it's seen as a dirty word. In truth, socialism is the pursuit to ensure the betterment of lives of the many rather than the few. This was the ideals of the foundation of the Labour Party, and it's shameful that Labour have moved so far away from it. Now, comrades, I feel like I'm amongst friends here, especially after a warm welcome, so I'm going to try and get something off my chest, because since a couple of weeks ago, I know it just came out this week, but I have been able to look myself in the mirror and hold my head up high, and I look at myself in the mirror and say, I am a socialist. But much, much more than that, I'm a proud new member of the only political party in Scotland that represents the working class, that rejects the neoliberal big business agenda, the Scottish Socialist Party. Now, friends, the question is, where do we go from here? This conference sees the SSP at an important crossroads, I think. I've heard it said before the referendum that the SSP was a spent force, that they'll forever be marred by past events of individuals no longer here. But the referendum changed that. But more than that, it was the hard work and spirit that each and every member of this party exuded in the campaign, especially our co-conveners Colin Fox and Sandra Webster, who has been inspirational and convinced myself and many others that if you are a socialist, you belong in a socialist party, and that party is the SSP. Well, we have to take stock and ask ourselves some serious questions. Where do we want this party to go? I've been greatly encouraged when Colin mentioned earlier that we want to make a mass socialist party. We don't want to stay on the precipice of the political spectre. We want to put our case to the very heart of Scottish society. I didn't join the SSP to stand on the sidelines and watch the SNP and the Red Tories battle it out in the lesser of the two neoliberal parties. We can, we must, and we will become a major force in Scottish politics. But make no mistake of the task we have at hand. It'll be tough. To get our party to become a major political party in Scotland, it'll take a united effort. If we want to be taken seriously, we have to take ourselves seriously. We must be coordinated, organised and professional. We will face two political machines in the Labour Party and the SNP. But we have right on our side, and we can have the people with us in every scheme and working class area in Scotland. This party has always done its best work when we have been brash, on the offensive, and antagonising, agitating, educating impetus for the people of Scotland. We need to win over traditional Labour voters, the real Labour voters. We must convince them that the traditional Labour voters, that socialism and the values that they hold dear are one and the same. This is the party that is home for them. That this is the party of social justice, of fairness and equality. Now is the time for us to be brave, comrades, to be bold. And now is the time to put socialism back to the forefront of politics in Scotland. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan. That applause, by the way, Jonathan, wasn't for you. As you walked. You didn't get a standing ovation walking in. We've next got Maggie Chapman, who's the co-convener of the Scottish Green Party.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with friends, comrades from Radical Independents, from the Scottish Socialist Party, and I'm sure there are a few others in the room as well. I'm Maggie Chapman, co-convener of the Scottish Green Party and also a local councillor here in Edinburgh. And I'd like to thank Colin and Sandra and the rest of you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you, to offer you some of my thoughts about where our respective parties are and what kinds of things we need to consider as we move forward into what I think we can all agree is uncharted political territory for Scotland. The referendum has created a huge politicisation of the Scottish people, and it shows that it's not the electorate, you, that are to blame for low election turnouts. It's us. It's us politicians who have failed to speak to people about things that matter to them. And it shows that there is a huge appetite for change, and not change on Westminster's terms. I think importantly, it also shows that movement politics can and does work. The opportunity to create a new politics motivated people like no other issue has done in a very long time. The ability of the Radical Independence Campaign, Commonweal, National Collective, as well as the parties campaigning for a yes vote to create mass engagement is unprecedented. And that is why it is so good to be here today, to show that despite our party's differences, we can and must continue to work together so we can take the hopes and visions that we do share and make them happen, even if we didn't get the result we were hoping for last month. Our respective parties have done very well out of the referendum: increased membership, increased enthusiasm, and, dare I say it, increased funds to get our messages out to even more people. But actually, that's not what really matters. What really matters is that we use our party structures and tools to support the wider movement for change, to get the best out of the skills and expertise that I know all of our new members have and are willing and eager to put to good use. One thing that was very clear to me during the referendum campaign was the surprise and perhaps even shock of those on the other side of the debate and their paymasters at the level of knowledge, expertise, and creativity that we were all bringing to the debate. Certainly not the dumb and apathetic public they expected. We have had decades of being told to leave everything to the politicians, to those who know best. And I think one of the legacies of the referendum is that people realise politics does not have to be like that. No more will we be told to shut up and just trot along to the ballot box once every 4 or 5 years to make our political views heard. I think it's also clear that we need to work hard on developing that vision of a new politics to engage even more people. That vision means rejecting the narrow and mean-spirited politics of Westminster, but also building a better way of working. Cooperative, not competitive. All of us first. I think there are 3 areas of shared interest for us to prioritise over the coming weeks and months. Firstly, standing up against the odorous austerity agenda and welfare cuts that are destroying people's lives. We can and must oppose the destruction of social security, the impact of which we see all around us on a daily basis, whether it's food banks, whether it's people taking their own lives because they can no longer afford to feed their families. We can and must create a fairer Scotland, one which values every single one of its people, not just those with money in their pockets. We can do this for arguing not only for the end of the austerity agenda and welfare reform, but introduction of positive things, of a citizen's income, of really redistributive tax powers. Secondly, our opposition to Trident and weapons of mass destruction. And we oppose these not just because they cost so much and because we want to spend the money on other things, but because they are morally wrong and should play no part in our peaceful future. I think only if we stand together can we oppose the war that Westminster has dragged us into, yet again with no democratic mandate. It is clear to me also that Westminster is using the conflict in the Middle East as a giant smokescreen for their failure to do what they promised to transform our economy for the better. And thirdly, fighting for extra powers for Scotland, not only because we have the right to control our own lives, but because we want to use those powers for very specific purposes. And I want to say a little bit more about this than the other two, perhaps. We need to work very hard to make sure that the Smith Commission process delivers on the promises made to the whole of Scotland, those who voted no, as well as those of us who voted yes. I see this process as the last opportunity for cosy consensus making by political parties. What we've experienced in the past year has been transformational in Scotland's political culture. That has undermined the ability of small groups of people at the top of political parties to direct our collective future. Whether it's in the SNP, the SSP, or the Greens, with our hugely expanded numbers, or the Westminster parties with their hugely reduced reputations, politics has to change. It's clear to me that the return to that politics as usual is not an option. It's what many people expected, and I think many people hoped for, but we can't go back there. I'm very honoured to be one of the two Greens on the Smith Commission process. I'm sad we don't have SSP colleagues sitting next to us, but we will be arguing for the strongest possible devolution settlement. We need to have the powers in Scotland to plan a future beyond oil, to reindustrialise through renewables, and to stop Westminster's destruction of social security. The vow by the leaders of the Westminster parties secured a no vote, but it did so at the price of substantial new powers for the Scottish Parliament. That means major tax-raising powers, and with those powers over tax must come significant borrowing powers too. It would create serious economic instability to base Scotland's public spending only on tax, not borrowing. Without borrowing powers, the Scottish Government would have to make huge numbers of working people redundant in the event of a recession, for example. We will also be arguing for a new way of doing politics. The referendum shows that parties can cooperate in different ways. I got used to sharing platforms with the SNP, with SSP colleagues, and with representatives from civil society, like Women for Independence, National Collective, Generation Yes, and of course the Radical Independence Campaign. Similarly, Labour collaborated with the parties they oppose at Westminster, getting very comfortable with the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats to make their case for the Union. And I think one of the reasons why that campaign for Yes was successful in building support for independence was that it drew together people who believed in different ways of doing politics. They may have had substantial differences in political ideologies, but they could see there was something else more important at stake. It was people working together for a better Scotland that played a positive role in the world, not the old politics of party point scoring, a new politics focusing on what you, the people, want and need. The people of Scotland are now perhaps the best politically educated people in the world. As Scots, we know more about why we oppose NHS privatisation in England than many people in England do. We need to extend this cooperation and this working together to the Smith Commission. We must listen to the voice of civil society, the voluntary sector, the trade unions that are now free to contribute in a way that they possibly couldn't do during the referendum campaign itself. So this is the last chance, I think, for the old politics to deliver substantial change. The momentum behind our democracy means that people won't stand being fobbed off yet again. We need to deliver real powers, and quibbling over the aggregates levy, for example, simply won't be enough. I now know more about the aggregates levy than I think I probably ever wanted to in my life, but that's part of the process. But it must go hand in hand, though, with devolution of power from Holyrood to communities, to local levels, to people, including local authorities, but local authorities divesting themselves of power and giving it to you. If we get this wrong, the mass movement that formed around the Yes campaign will surely demand serious new powers. That's something I would welcome, some kind of mass march on Westminster, but I suspect other parties, not represented here, are probably quite frightened of the consequences of that, of the consequences of a newly invigorated and politicised, educated, informed and intelligent population. Politics as we know it is over, and it is up to us, all of us, to deliver the powers that reflect our way forward, our new Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Can I now introduce Jonathan Shaffey, who's the co-founder of the Radical Independence Campaign. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks very much, and first of all, thanks very much for the invitation to speak at your conference. I was thinking on the way over here, this is now the third conference in a row which I've been invited to speak, and it's a privilege to speak at the SSP conference, and thanks very much for the invite. What I wanted to say was not too much, but I wanted to start with just a short reflection on the referendum process that we've all just been through over the last 2 years. And I think it's important that we recognise that the left in Scotland, the radical left, the socialist left, the green left, all of us together actually managed not only to, I think, shape the narrative around the referendum in terms of the importance of class, the importance of the anti-austerity movement running throughout it, of trade unionism, of democracy, of all of these kinds of ideas. But in my honest opinion, I don't think we would have got 45% had it not been for the impact and the input of the radical left in Scotland. I just don't think we would have done it. And I think that shows a whole number of things, but one thing that I think that we have to point out, and of course we're absolutely united on the question of independence, but the reason I think that our input, our collective input, made the difference is because, to be quite honest with you, if you're going to tell people that you're going to vote and nothing changes, I'm sorry, but that's not the world we're living in. People want change, and I think it's our job to try and match what people's aspirations are with our levels of organisation and our levels of aspiration as well. So I think that's the first thing. And the second thing was the degree to which the ordinary people in Scotland were actually empowered by the referendum process. Not just empowered, but politically engaged. I was at a meeting in Dundee a couple of nights ago, spoke to a lot of people at it, and it was a meeting about where does the sort of local yes movement go next and that sort of thing. But we weren't just talking about independence, we weren't just talking about austerity, we were talking about capitalism. And I want to say that we need a voice in society, we need organisations in society who outright oppose the capitalist system. No ifs, no buts, we oppose capitalism. And the reason that's important, it's not just to say that the sort of reforms that we are fighting for day in, day out, and everyday activism that we are all taking part in, whether it's trade unions, community organisations, whatever it might be, but it's to say something quite fundamental. Take food banks. It's brilliant that people give food to food banks, but we should be arguing an end to food banks. We should be saying that food banks don't have a place in society at all. And so when you boil it down, really it does come down to the way this economy is run, the interests in which it's run, and it seems obvious now, not just to socialists, not just to those in the radical left, but to a growing number of people right across, not just Scotland, but right across the world, that the system doesn't work for them. Loads of us here will have been involved in meetings that take place upstairs in pubs, and there's maybe 10 years there, and we're thinking about how we keep the flame alive, because for a lot of the time, if you're a socialist, that can be the kind of situation that you find yourself in. But look at where we are now. I mean, the RIC conference that's coming up, I hope some of you will be able to go, is going to be in the Clyde Auditorium. There's going to be 3,000 people at it. I mean, that's what happens when there's a level of cooperation amongst all of the progressive left in Scotland. It means that we can bring together huge numbers of people to make quite serious demands. Now, that said, I think radical independence, like all of us, has got challenges. It's got huge opportunities in terms of what's going on, but I think it's also got challenges. How is it that we maximise the resistance to austerity that we are going to face? How is it that we maximise the question of this democratic revival that's taken place in Scotland? But here's something else that I think that we need to be thinking about. When we talk about the Labour Party and we talk about the Labour movement, we understand that they're two different things. But for too long, the Labour Party has dominated the Labour movement. The Labour Party has dominated the trade union leadership. And what it's meant is that time and time again, they're held back by the Labour Party at the top of the trade unions. Now, I think we've got a chance to change that. On the one hand, the Labour Party is in complete disarray. I'm sure Joanne Lamont's resignation has been talked about at length already, but in complete disarray. And at the same time, you have alive to the possibilities of radical social change, hundreds of thousands of people right across Scotland. Let's get those people into the trade unions. Let's get those yes-voting, left-wing workers who want to see change into the unions, and let's get them challenging the Labour leadership of those unions. Let's start thinking about how that could lead towards a broader fight back. The last couple of things before I wrap up, because I don't want to speak for too long, is that if you look at what's happening just now, people have talked about how society's changed over the last sort of 3 or 4 decades as the neoliberal process, the process of financialisation, of encouraging people to get themselves into debt, of entrenched poverty and growing inequality. The worrying thing, the scary and terrifying thing, is that that process has increased so rapidly in even the last 5 or 6 years. The degree to which inequality is growing, the degree to which the top richest people in the UK have seen their wealth growing. They've seen it grown by 15%, by the way, over the last year alone. Imagine your wages increased by 15%. That's one thing. But imagine you were a billionaire and your wages increased by 15%, your wealth increased by 15%. That's a staggering amount of money. And we're constantly told that there's no money in society. It takes socialists, to be quite honest with you. It takes the left. It takes all of us that compose the radical left in Scotland, Greens, socialists, progressive people, the length and breadth of Scotland, to make the demand that enough is enough. Enough is enough. And it's an important thing to say. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was the question of sort of where we go from here and how we maximise the resistance in Scotland. One of the things that I think that we did well, and I'm not saying we did everything well, but one of the things that I think we did well was that we were internationalist in our outlook, that we recognised that it was important that for the radical movement for independence, that we didn't just see ourselves in a purely Scottish context. And what we are going to face now is a whole raft of measures coming from things like TTIP. And one of the things I think we've got to do is to start thinking about how we build a pan-European social movement, a pan-European anti-austerity, pro-democracy, pro-people, pro-worker movement that takes place right across the length and breadth of Europe. Because if we manage to do that, then it means that the ambitions, not just of the people in Scotland, but right across Europe, are going to be raised. But it also means that we will be enriched. We will be enriched by the solidarity that we will receive through the struggles that we face here in Scotland. And people have talked about the SNP. I want to say something about the SNP, who got us there when it came to the referendum. But I want to say 2 things. Remember this. Remember that they wanted devolution max on the ballot paper. Remember that. And secondly, remember also that despite the fact, and it's a good thing, and we should encourage the SNP when they move to the left, despite the fact that they have a raft of what you would term left-wing measures, they're not a left party, they are a neoliberal party. And people it's important, I think, that we say that, because people might say, well, doesn't that breed disunity? We've been working with the SNP, with all sorts of people in the independence movement over the last 2 years, but did we dilute our principles? No, we didn't. The SSP didn't dilute its principles. Rick never, the Greens never. We kept our principles strong. And I think it's important that we do that as we go forward. So just lastly, to sum up, I think that where we need to go now is open to debate, is open to discussion. At the Rick conference, there'll be all kinds of discussions about the sort of form that Rick takes in terms of what its campaigning priorities should be. But I think the key lesson that we have learned is that the closer that we all work together, despite differences, despite disagreements about strategy and tactics or a whole number of things, the closer that we work together, the stronger we're going to be. And if we manage to do that, I seriously think that given the backdrop of this politically aware population, we can give the Tories, we can give every single one of them who's trying to keep us down the fight of their lives. And if we fight properly, if we fight with strategy, with tactics, with timing, with thinking through clearly what we're doing, and with unity of purpose, I believe that we can win. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Now, just before we go on to the next item, if we could have a quick photo opportunity, if the conference could give us a minute. And is Jim in the room? Can I just say that's not an excuse to leave the conference, incidentally? Listen, comrades, can I just say, while the photographs are getting taken, this isn't a natural break, so don't start rushing away. We've got the financial report, which in some respects is the most important part of this conference, so come back in and sit down. We'll be finishing for lunch about 1 o'clock.
And we're going to have lunch in half an hour, so feel free to stay.
All right, comrades, that bit's over, and we can come back in. See anybody at the back of the hall? Could you just give a shout to people? Okay. Comrades, people at the back, could you come back in? Okay. The next bit is the financial report. Can I just say before we start the financial report that I think the person in charge of financing the party has probably the hardest job within the party. It's the most thankless job. And I think Jim, as the treasurer for probably longer than he wanted to be, has done an absolutely rock-solid job for the party. It deserves all our praise and support. That's despite the fact that sometimes when Jim enters a room, we all collectively groan, basically, because he's going to ask for more and more money. So anyway, the financial report from Jim.
Thanks, Bill. For comrades who don't know me, I'm Jim McVicker. I'm the party's national treasurer. I'm the guy who's no mates, stands in the pub his cell. Nobody talks to me because the only thing that I ask you for is your money. That's not the real situation. I think I've got the easiest job in the Scottish Socialist Party, being the party's treasurer. I look around this room today and I see loads of people who I don't know. See loads of new faces, young people, women, older workers, and I think that's absolute fantastic, and I think that's an absolute testament to the political will of the Scottish Socialist Party and its membership, and every single person in here should be proud to say that they're a member of the Scottish Socialist Party. They should be proud to say that, unlike the chap who was standing outside the door this morning, that we are Scotland's Socialist Party. Comrades, it's difficult. For the past 16 years, this party has ploughed maybe a lone furrow on the issue of an independent socialist Scotland. But just think about what's happened in the last year. We've seen the referendum campaign. We've seen the party grow. And we've seen that on the basis of our socialist principles and our socialist policies. And I think that's, again, a tremendous commitment to the party and a tremendous pressure for the party at that point. Some folks say to me, well, see, you're the National Treasurer. What do you do? I say, that's a good question. I've sleepless nights. I walk the flare at 3 in the morning giving it, oh no, we just got all that stuff for the printers for the conference and it's not all stapled together. What are we going to do? Like, you know, and that's what I spent my Friday night, me and Christine, stapling 5,000 sheets of paper together because the printer had made a mistake with the copying. But like most things, it usually works out okay in the end. I'm responsible for the organisation of the party's finance. I'm responsible for organising the collections, the appeals, the voice sales and the subs. The things that every member of the Scottish Socialist Party should also be involved in. We've made a tremendous leap forward in the past period, and it's important that we do get the cash in and raise the money for the Scottish Socialist Party. I think somebody said earlier today, you can have the best ideas in the world, you can have the best party in the world, you can have the best organisation in the world, but see if you've not got the money, you're standing at the street corner with nothing. We're standing at the street corners now with the Scottish Socialist Voice, that I would argue is the best socialist newspaper, politically and content-wise, in the British Isles. We're standing at street corners now with T-shirts with our pamphlets on the Democratic Republic, our pamphlets on Scottish independence, etc., which in the main have sold out during the referendum campaign. Again, a tremendous move for the party, etc. We don't have any rich friends. We don't have any lottery winners. I don't even think we've got any winners for the bookies to support us, to support this party. This party, financially supported by our members, our friends, and the people who are willing to give to the party, whether it be a small amount or a large amount. Every donation, everything that comes to this party is appreciated by the party itself. We're in the process of perhaps seeing the parties, hopefully, with the 2,500 members, etc., seeing the party's finance change in the coming period, and I think that's good. We've got every member, when they come in and register, got a copy of the party's accounts for 2013. Now, I know they might be a bit dated because we cancelled the conference, but that's we cancelled the conference because of the referendum and changed it to just now. But those accounts are important to the party. One, we have to register them with the Electoral Commission, which is a legal thing that we have to do, but also it's about accountability and transparency. Those accounts are there for any member to see, any member to question, and any member to go to take to their branch, etc., and come back to us with questions, etc. And that's important, as I say, about accountability and clarity, etc. We've seen an interest in the past, since the referendum, an interest in Scottish politics, which I think is unprecedented for generations. And we've seen the growth of the Scottish Socialist Party itself. And I think, again, that's absolutely brilliant. The SSP, as people have said, have played a historic role during the referendum campaign, whether it be in Yes Scotland, whether it be in RIC, or whether it be the SSP standing alone. We've had almost over 100 public meetings, the length and breadth of Scotland, on the issue of the referendum. Comrades have travelled from north to south, putting our case across, and they should be commended. We've had stalls, we've had meetings, we've had our pamphlets, etc., and we've stamped, if you like, the identity of the Scottish Socialist Party on the referendum campaign. I think that's why we received 2,500 applications for membership. One of the things that we have to do, and it's not going to be an easy job, it's going to be a very, very difficult job to turn those 2,500 membership applications into party members, into people that will be at next year's conference, where we will be looking at bigger halls, bigger venues, etc. And that's the job of every single member in here, I believe, to get to see the people who have applied, to get them to fill the standing order forums in, and to get them to come to the party meetings and become part of the new, become part of the vibrant Scottish Socialist Party, because that's exactly what we have become. Colin said, the discussion with Colin when he joined the Yes Scotland campaign, etc., and he says to me, he says, we need to raise £50,000 for this campaign. And I thought, he's off his trumpet line, you know. 50 grand? No way. Well, I was right, we didn't raise 50 grand, and we apologise for that. We've raised £31,000 from our members for the referendum campaign. And I think, again, we should all be proud of that, because if you look at our accounts for last year, our turnover for last year was £29,000. So to run the party, all the money we got in last year, we've actually raised more in the referendum campaign, and I think that's fantastic. That's not a final figure, because we've not got a final figure yet, because we're still going through all the bills, all the receipts, etc., that we've got to give to the Electoral Commission, etc. I mean, there was John Miller and Christine, they were in my house, well, it's Christine's house as well. They were there last week, going through all the receipts, bank statements, stuff, etc., trying to get this final figure. We've got to submit that to the Electoral Commission by the 18th of December. But the most popular saying that day when we were doing it was, oh no mere staples, because somebody's got a habit of putting 3 and 4 staples into things, like it causing us absolute problems. But we need to fix that out. We reckon we've spent maybe about 28 grand on the election, but the referendum. But the point is, everything that we've raised will go on the campaign, trying to obviously raise the money to pay Colin back for the stamps, etc. He fell for that one as well, like, you know. But, you know, we've moved forward and we've done all these things, and it's absolutely brilliant. And I think the finances of the party are in a far better shape than they were certainly this time last year and as they've been in the past. But like all financial appeals, all financial reports, there's also the appeal with 2 lovely assistants, John and Lindsay, who are at the back of the hall. We'll be moving. will be moving amongst you, and if you can possibly please make a donation to the party's a referendum fund. I would say to folk, I'm going to continue speaking. So see not to drown me out. Just put paper money in it. Don't put coins in it, like, you know. So obviously, you know, if comrades would make a small donation. We'll also have, at lunchtime, we'll have a raffle where there'll be some fantastic prizes. Mainly alcohol, which is a bit of a reflection of where we're at with the party, like, you know. But again, if comrades can do that, I would say in conclusion, the last 12 months has been very, very difficult for every single person here. A very difficult period for the SSP. But I think again, we took up the challenge. We were right up there with the challenge, and by looking around this hall today, I think everybody can say that those people, and Colin spoke earlier, that wrote off the Scottish Socialist Party, there's been many, many people who have, I mind reading on websites, people writing things, former party members writing RIP SSP. Well, we would say to all those people who wrote off the SSP, who said that we would pick over the bones of the SSP. Look at this conference today. Look at what we've raised. Look at the vibrant socialist party we are. We are Scotland's Socialist Party, and we will take it forward and build a party in the next 12 months that will make us all proud of the slogan of this party, the cornerstone of this party, of an independent socialist Scotland.
Thanks, Jim. Now, before we formally agree the accounts or move the accounts, any questions for Jim? Well, that's straightforward. So can we formally adopt these accounts at the conference? I'm sure everybody spent hours pouring through them. Okay, the accounts have been formally adopted. Okay. We're about to finish for lunch. There's a couple of important announcements. The ballot for the NEC, we're trying to finish that today, so we've set lunchtime as the closing moment for that. So I think that's 2 o'clock they have to be in for, which gives us a chance to actually count them before the day's over. The second thing is the workshops. When we come back at 2 o'clock, workshops will be go straight into workshops. The workshops themselves are organising locally. Paolo's doing that one. Campaign for Socialism, which is Richie, and Media Old and New, which is Ken and Neil. I don't know if that's a comment of any. I don't know who's doing Old and New. Can we get an indication of numbers, first of all, just to give us an indication of workshops? Organising locally with Paolo, and remember, it's not a talent contest or anything like that. Just to get an indication of numbers. So who's going to the one organising locally? Okay, and that's going to be up. Okay. Yeah, I'll use the other microphone. Actually, I can hear that difference now. Right, organising locally, which has been organised by Paolo, is upstairs. Just another indication of numbers then of who's going to that. Okay, I'm sure Paolo's taken a notice as that he just walks out the door there. Campaign for Socialism, which is Richie's organising, and which will be downstairs. Okay, and Media Old and New, which I think will be up there. Okay, so people, well, we'll start the workshops as soon as we come back. So we're going to stop for lunch now. There are sandwiches and things outside. There's also various cafes round about here. What I would say is don't go wandering round Edinburgh, but we need to start back very sharply at 2 o'clock. Okay, thanks.
most party conferences take over 70%.